I'm seeing this floating around regarding the Carolina Hurricanes. If they can't get a deal done with Mikko Rantanen, the star forward that they traded for from the Colorado Avalanche just a couple of weeks ago, part of a 3-team trade where they get Mikko Rantanen. They also got Taylor Hall from the Chicago Blackhawks. They gave up Jack Drury as well as Martin Necas. A couple picks get moved, so on and so forth. There's talk that if they can't get a deal done by the trade deadline, that Mikko Rantanen is going to get shipped out?
I mean, the irony.
It'd be interesting. Elliot Friedman, who's part of Sportsnet, part of the 32 Questions podcast, was on with Sportsnet talking about the Four Nations, like the break that's on right now for the Four Nations tournament that the NHL is putting on. This is like basically the bye week essentially for guys in the NHL, with the exception of those playing in the Four Nations. That during this break of actual NHL game action, teams are going to be talking.
One thing I was definitely told was that there will be contract negotiations. Like, everybody here is going to have a clear picture by the end of this tournament over, which free agents they're going to be able to keep, if negotiations are going to be in a positive place or not. Like, it's kind of weird, Mike. You don't usually see this, but this is in a lot of ways a kind of hard reset on the business of the league.
So a lot of people viewed this Four Nations break as almost like the first trade deadline. The real trade deadline is March 6th. But a lot of teams, we saw the Carolina Hurricanes make the first move. But then about a week later, we saw JT Miller from the Vancouver Canucks get traded to the New York Rangers. JT Miller, a player that the Carolina Hurricanes were in conversation with about trading for from Vancouver. So this week was kind of viewed as like the first deadline. All right, let's make some moves. Let's figure out what our team can be moving forward. But then it comes to figuring out with your free agents that are on your team. This is where a lot of general managers and front offices around the NHL are going to be talking with players and agents this coming week, like the week we're in right now and next week. All right, can we hammer out a long-term contract? We know what the salary cap is going to be for the next few years. There's a big jump in the salary cap. What are things going to look like in terms of who can we play, who can we keep, who can we retain? Because I think if teams are able to sign pending free agents, so guys that are in the final year of their contract, if they can lock players up long-term, those players aren't going to get traded. But if you can't lock these players up long-term, if you can't come to terms, if you can't find some sort of financial agreement, then they become a trade piece. And I think this is why this week and next week are so vital. This 2-week stretch is so big. And a lot of people are also looking around the league to see what players are also signing deals. Okay, this player, this defenseman on the other team signed a 40-year contract extension worth X amount of dollars. Okay, well, how does that impact us signing our guy? Or how does that impact us trying to plan for free agency this offseason or the trade deadline? And a big piece that Elliot Friedman talked about is a lot of eyes are on the Carolina Hurricanes and what they do with Mikko Rantanen.
If you take a look at that one, there's so much at stake. First of all, can Carolina re-sign him? That's number one. Can Carolina re-sign him? That's number one. That's, I think, the thing we're looking at. If not, what does it mean for the trade deadline? Do they turn around and flip him? And the other thing, too, is if Rantanen does sign in Carolina, it takes him off the board for other teams that might be interested. So how do they change? So I really do believe that the Rantanen one is the biggest domino heading into the deadline. I mean, unless there's something going on that I'm not seeing right now, which is always possible, I don't sense that Mitch Marner's anywhere close to making a decision. So, but I think Rantanen is kind of being put into a situation where he's going to have to make some kind of decision one way or the other. And because of that, there's a lot of things that could happen because of it.
All right, there's a lot that's going to be building off of this Mikko Rantanen decision. Here's what Carolina, the Hurricanes, have going into next year based off their salary cap situation. We know that Brent Burns is in the last year of his contract. He's likely gone. Dmitry Orlov, another defenseman in the last year of his contract, also likely gone. How do you supplement? Okay, well, that's 2 defenseman spots you need to fill. Okay, well, then that's Scott Morrow, the young defenseman we've seen come up and play a few games for Carolina, who's on a rookie contract, and Alexander Nikishin, who's currently playing in Russia, should be here in about a couple months. That's how you fill it. So not spending a lot of money in that regard. Carolina right now is projected to have just over $38 million in cap space going into next year. That's the 5th most in the entire league. So you can break the bank for Mikko Rantanen if you want to keep him, if he decides to stay. You can break the bank for him. If you want to give him $14 million a year, you can easily do that and have a ton of money still left over to spend. Now, you also have to factor in that contract carrying into future years, and you know that some young guys that are currently on your team are going to be due for contract extensions a few years down the line, but you'll let a few years down the line take care of itself a few years down the line. But you can get Mikko Rantanen right now if he signs the exact same deal that Leon Draisaitl of the Edmonton Oilers just signed. 8 years, $14 million. Which, by the way, the Carolina Hurricanes are the only team right now that can offer Mikko Rantanen 8 years on a contract. There's a rule in the NHL that free agents, if you do hit free agency, you can sign 8 years maximum length contract with the team that you're currently with. But if you do hit free agency and you want to sign with another team, the max length of that contract is only 7 years. I know a lot of people want to think about what happened with Jake Gensel last year in terms of they traded for him from Pittsburgh. They thought they can maybe keep him for 8 years after last year, sign him to a long-term contract extension. It just didn't work out. Carolina was not in the cap situation that they are in right now. This past offseason, they really didn't have the money. They're trying to sign Jake Gensel to a contract extension while still trying to figure out an extension for Seth Jarvis and still trying to figure out, okay, well, what are we going to do with Martin Necas, who's a restricted free agent, Jack Drury? There's a lot of other moving pieces. Things were a lot tighter. This offseason coming up, not so much. The team and Mikko Rantanen have to decide if things fit. Now, about the possibility of him getting traded, Graham, at the trade deadline, that'd be wild. That would be pretty crazy.
It just now makes me think about when you were watching the ESPN broadcast of the Carolina Hurricanes Minnesota Wild game from last week, and they put that still image of Eric Tulsky in his box with his laptop open. Now I'm like, oh man, who was he sending emails to during that game?
Oh, you never know. I mean, that guy clearly is in on all deals.
There's a reason why he's called the mad scientist, correct?
I'd say so. I do not see the Carolina Hurricanes trading Mikko Rantanen at the trade deadline, the guy you just got. Unless he just flat out tells you, guys, I don't want to be here. I don't. If he flat tells you that, okay, explore it. But I don't feel that's going to happen. I just don't. There's a reason why Carolina made the move for this guy. Hey, you know what? But hey, you know what? If he says Mikko Rantanen, I was not expecting to leave Colorado. I was not expecting to leave there. I was no idea that they would possibly trade me. Didn't know that was the case. You know what you tell Mikko? Well, it's because we wanted you more. We were the ones that wanted you most. That's why you're here. Because we want you here. We think you can be the star of this team, the difference maker of this franchise, someone that we can have championships with for years. We want you here. That's why we traded for you. They didn't want you. Otherwise, why are you here? We want you. You can spin that however you want, Graham.
And also, there's the personal relationship, too, I feel. If you were to do this, it just kind of feels like maybe you screwed over Marty Necas a little bit.
I don't know if you did that.
But, I mean, as far as right now, but I'm just saying, like, if this is what you did in order to get Mikko traded again at the deadline, it just shows, all right, well, maybe that relationship was deteriorating that much that you just kind of used him as a fill-in trade.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think Necas was going to get moved at some point. I really do. If Carolina wanted to make a big move, Martin Necas was going to have to be part of it. because a lot of teams see his skill level and all that. But it would be kind of wild, though. You trade Martin Necas and the guy that you traded for, like you said,
correct,
all of a sudden is also gone.
Yeah. Wrong word that you used there, but that's exactly what I was trying to get to.
I don't know what you're going to get in return. What you're going to get if you're going to trade Mikko Rantanen, you're going to need multiple players that can play for your team right now. And I mean multiple players that can play for your team right now. Hence the reason why Colorado, when they gave him up, it's like, well, okay, we need a top 6 forward in Martin Necas, and we're also going to need a player that can play right now in Jack Drury, plus picks. So if Carolina is moving Mikko Rantanen, I need a star top 6 player and another guy that can play. At minimum. I don't see it happening.